Hi, I'm Beck and welcome to the TBR tag. I haven't done this since 2020, so I thought it would be good to revisit my TBR pile and my methods and what I like reading and what I've got to read. So without further ado, let's jump into question 1, which is how do you keep track of your TBR? And I have a cart. I don't know if you can see it very well behind me, but I keep all of my physical books on that, and it really helps me to kind of visually separate them from my bookshelves, which is really helping me plan out monthly to be read videos. Question 2 is your TBR mostly print or ebook? So TBR is to be read pile, if that wasn't clear. Honestly, it's mostly print, hence the cart. I do often listen to audiobooks as well, and there are a few books that I really wanted to get, but I might have to get the ebook because they are just so ridiculously expensive. So one of them is The Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking, and then the other one is The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, which are kind of two cozier fantasies that I've seen people talk about quite often in the past 6 months. And it seems like a lot of people are enjoying them, and I really like cozy fantasy, which is why I've loved Becky Chambers, I've loved Legends and Lattes. I just really want to be able to read these, but when I look at the paperback, not even the hardback, the paperback for each of these is over $30. I think one of them, the Witches one, was 37 Australian dollars, and that is just ridiculous. Buying a paperback, for example, like a young adult paperback in Australia, is usually about $15. So the fact that I have to pay more than double that for just a regular paperback as well, which is probably a similar amount of pages, is a bit of a joke to me. So I might have to deviate from my TBR cart and reading audiobooks to get them as ebooks maybe. That's kind of the only outlier though. Usually I read print. Question number 3 is how do you determine a book from your to be read pile to read next? This is the age-old question because I always struggle with it. Honestly, mostly it is my mood based on the season, because during December, January and February in Australia it's summer, so I've been reading a lot of contemporary books, and then as the weather gets colder, I gravitate to a lot of fantasy. But that said, I've read fantasy and contemporary in the past couple of months, so it's not always dictated by mood. Sometimes it's just what I actually physically have, and honestly that's really helped with the cart. I can actually look at all of the books and go, I'm in the mood for these random eclectic picks. So it's actually really helping me. Like, I would recommend a cart if you haven't got on board with it. This is me trying to convince you because it's honestly it's really helping. The next question is what book has been on your TBR the longest? And I'm actually pretty good at getting my to be read list read, which is quite a surprise to me, but the one I've had on the longest is The Vor, which I've included in multiple goals videos this year. I've just put a poll on my Instagram about which book I should start next because I want to do like a try a chapter vlog and start getting my kind of mood around these and knowing when is the right vibe to read them. So The Vor was on that poll, and I think I'm going to be starting it very soon. I need to read it this year because frankly it has been way too long, and this was recommended to me by one of my best friends, and it was recommended by her to me a very long time ago. She doesn't really care that I've taken this long, but I feel bad that I've taken this long. She's probably at this point forgotten that she recommended it to me, but I need to read this. It's a fantasy and it's a slow burn and it's about a magical forest. That is all I know about it. So pray for me that it is good. Question 5 is name a book that you recently added to your to be read pile. And I recently filmed a book haul actually, so I will link that for you because I had a lot of fun. But the most recent book that I've added is Witch Please, because on the day I wanted to film my book haul, it arrived like 30 minutes before I sat down to film, which was very coincidental. So this is absolutely the most recent book I have acquired, and I'm probably going to read it in March. It's got that cozy fantasy vibe in terms of the main character being a witch called Danica, and she's kind of sworn off love because of a bad breakup, and for some reason, I don't know how they meet or how they're connected yet, she goes to work at this bakery, and this bakery is owned by Titus Winnicker, who is her love interest, and he's also mundane, so he doesn't really get involved in the magical world at all. And when he falls in love, it's like ride or die, like he's in love forever. So Danica's like, well, I don't want love at all. And he's like, I do. So it'll be interesting to see these two opposites get on board with both baking and being in that forced proximity and just enjoying each other's company. I think Danica is going to soften a lot, and I really hope I love this. I've hyped it up to myself now and I don't want it to be bad. Question 6 is name a book on your TBR that is on there specifically for the beautiful cover. I don't usually cover buy for books. I like knowing a little bit about them first. Granted though, once I know about a book, I will look at all the covers and see which one I prefer, but I don't go out and buy books based on their cover anymore, because I did that years ago and I ended up with over 200 unread books, and that really personally stressed me out, and I was like, I don't want to feel like that again, so I'm not doing that as much anymore. But Brandon Sanderson, one of my favorite authors, if you couldn't tell from my shelves, released a bunch of secret projects that he'd written throughout all of COVID lockdowns. So he wrote 4 books and he's releasing them every quarter in 2023, starting with Tress of the, oh, it's very shiny, starting with Tress of the Emerald Sea, which is still in its plastic because I haven't opened this to read yet. But this is a high fantasy by him that I could not resist backing the Kickstarter for, because these are exclusive hardcovers and it's beautiful, honestly. Question 7 is name a book on your to be read pile that you basically plan to never read. I'm kind of exposing myself here because last year I did a video challenge that absolutely bombed and failed. At least in my opinion, it might not have looked that way as much outwardly, but I bought a whole bunch of books based on BookTuber's favorite books in 2021, and I was like, I'm going to read all these in 2022, but 2022 was really rough for me, probably rough for a lot of other people too, and I just didn't have the time or didn't feel like I could make time to read and then kind of catalog my reactions and thoughts about all of these in enough time, because I was barely reading for me, let alone for any kind of secret vlogs or projects I could do at the same time. So there's about 4 books that I want to talk about. One is The Ember Blade, which is a very chunky fantasy book, and I'm probably going to try it in that same vlog that I start The Vor for the first time, because if I'm going to try a bunch of books and decide whether I keep them or not, why not include this on a try chapter tag to see if I actually will like this. But this was one of Murphy Napier's favorite books in 2021, and I was like, sometimes our tastes cross over, so maybe I'll like this. I still don't know. Additionally, I am subscribed to Daniel Green, and this was one of his favorites too, called The Lost War, and it's an indie published fantasy book. Again, that's all I know about it, and I'm going back on what I said before. I usually buy books and I know something about them beforehand, but these books I really didn't know, and I've got 2 more down here. These books I didn't know anything about before I bought, and I think that's shame on me, because if I'm going to spend my money, I need to know if I'm kind of spending it with a decent shot at enjoying the outcome, and on these, I had no idea. I still have no idea. The other 2 books that I mentioned are A Man Called Ove and A Thousand Splendid Suns, and these are more like fiction and literary fiction, so again, really things that I don't genuinely enjoy a lot of the time. I just find that my brain space doesn't latch onto them. I don't know why. Same with classics, like they're not my thing, but I thought these seem to be popular to people outside of their current genre, and so when a book gets popular, I'm like, maybe I will like it if everyone else did. I honestly don't know, but I'm willing to at least try a chapter and see if I will like it based on the writing style and the tone. Who knows, maybe I could actually enjoy these, but to me, I don't know enough about them at all, and I know that this one's a movie, so I'm already like, do I just skip over all of this effort and watch the movie, which is like a book cardinal sin? Like, I honestly do not know. Question number 8 is name an unpublished book on your to be read list that you cannot wait to get your hands on and read. For me, that would be Iris Kelly Doesn't Date, which comes out probably like August, September this year. It is the 3rd book in the Bright Falls series, and the first books are Delilah Green Doesn't Care and Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail. I loved both of them and gave them both 5 stars, and I talked about them in my January wrap up. So I've read them very recently, and that means that because I read them back to back, I immediately want the sequel, but I have to wait months for it now, which was a bit of a faux pas by me. But anyway, I also am looking forward to the sequel to Black Sun by Rebecca Rowanhorse, because I recently finally read Fevered Star and I didn't love it as much. It felt very much like a setting up book, and I don't really vibe with the characters as much as I did in the first book. It felt like it pulled them apart unnecessarily in order to make them suffer and position them specifically for the 3rd book, and it just felt a bit clunky to me and I felt disconnected. So hopefully the 3rd book brings it all back for me, and that comes out in August this year. So a few books towards the end of the year are what I'm looking forward to, and I'm hoping for the best as well. Question number 9 is name a book on your TBR that you feel like everyone has read except you, and for me that would be Alice Oseman. Yes, I've read and absolutely adored Heartstopper, but I haven't read Loveless or I Was Born for This, because these are on my current to be read list as well. And I feel like everyone has gotten on board with Alice Oseman, and then Heartstopper is their most recent read of Alice Oseman. But for me, Heartstopper was my first read. The other books I'm just kind of trying to catch up on. I've read Radio Silence now, and I'm probably going to do I Was Born for This next, and then Loveless, and they are on my February TBR. Whether I get to them or not, I'm not sure. I might pick them up during March, but early this year would be ideal. So I'm trying to make my way through Oseman's work, and I feel like everyone has already been there, done that. And then the second last question is name a book on your TBR that you're dying to read. And I am dying to get to Bloodmarked, which is the sequel to Legendborn, to the point where I feel like I've hyped it up so much to myself that if it's just okay, I'm going to be really disappointed because I loved Legendborn so much. But I've now got a big commute to and from work, and I can't read physically on trains because it makes me feel motion sick. And I tried the audiobook for this and it's terrible. So I'm like, the only way to read this is physically. So I need to commit to taking this to and from work with me and reading it on my 30-minute lunch breaks every single day. Like, how many sessions of 30 minutes of reading is this going to take for me to finish? Probably a lot. So the reason that I've kind of put it off and not put it on to be read list this year is because I'm intimidated by the way that this is going to just tank my reading, and I don't want it to make me feel like I'm not reading a lot. My reading motivation this year has been really high, and so if I read this and then feel like I'm not finishing anything, I'm going to be disappointed in myself. So I think I need to read this at the same time I'm reading a few other short books to kind of keep my momentum going. I don't know, I need to trick myself into starting it somehow. And then the final question on this tag is, how many books are on your TBR pile? For me, I am super proud to say that I have 21 books on my to be read pile, which has taken a monumentous effort to get down to that point because I said a few years ago that I have over 200 books to read. So through a lot of reading and a lot of work and a lot of self-awareness, I guess, of knowing my reading taste, knowing when to put books down, I've managed to get this number right down to under 30, which was my goal. Under 20 would be great, and I feel like I'm very much chasing that under 20 feel. At the same time though, sometimes I put a TBR list together for a month and I'm like, I feel like I'm running out of books. So, you know, if you've got too many books, it's stressful, and if you don't have enough books, it's also stressful, apparently. So I can't really win, but I'm just glad that I don't have an overwhelming number anymore. I couldn't comprehend that, that was too much. So I think I prefer the smaller number, but thank you so much for watching this video. Come and let me know down below how many books you have on your to be read pile. I am morbidly curious. I would like to know if you prefer a bigger to be read pile, if you like a smaller to be read pile, let me know. But thank you so much for watching this video. I'll come chat to you down below in the comments, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.